The year was 1943. Over the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean, the roar of engines echoed through the clouds. Japanese Zero fighters cut across the sunlight, their wings flashing like blades of steel. For months, they had ruled these skies, swift, deadly, and precise. To their pilots, no enemy aircraft could withstand the fury of their 20-millimeter cannons. But that morning, something new appeared on the horizon. Large, slow, and heavy, the aircraft seemed to defy the very logic of flight. 4 engines, a massive frame. To the Japanese pilots, it looked less like a plane and more like a flying fortress. And in truth, that was exactly what it was. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was born from a single, unshakable idea. If you couldn't outrun the enemy, you would outlast them. She carried 10 men: pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, gunners, navigators, all bound together inside a machine of steel and fire. Armor plating protected her vitals. Self-sealing fuel tanks prevented explosions. And 13.5 zero-caliber machine guns waited at every corner, covering the sky like a storm of lead. American engineers had built her for one purpose: to survive what no aircraft should survive. And soon, she would prove just how unbreakable she truly was. On a humid morning in August, a squadron of flying fortresses lifted off from Espiritu Santo, bound for Japanese-held Rabaul. Below them stretched the endless ocean. Above, the thin, cold air of 10,000 feet. They knew what awaited them. The Zero squadrons, stationed at Rabaul, were among the best in the world. Yet the bombers pressed on, heavy with bombs, and heavier with determination. Hours into the mission, radar screens lit up on Japanese outposts. Sirens blared. Fighters scrambled. And the hunters took to the sky. Out of the sun, they came, dozens of Zeros in tight formation. The first bursts of cannon fire struck the lead B-17. Metal screamed, glass shattered, oxygen hissed out into the thin air. But the formation held. The flying fortresses didn't break apart or dive for cover. Instead, they turned toward the attack. Like great armored beasts, they answered with their own thunder. Machine guns roared from every window. Tracer rounds lit up the heavens. A Japanese pilot would later describe it as flying into a hurricane of bullets. One B-17, tail number 231678, took the worst of it. 25 minutes under constant assault. The right wing shredded. 2 engines gone. Fuel leaking from holes the size of fists. The tail gunner was dead. The waist gunners fought through smoke and flame. By all logic, the plane should have fallen apart. Yet somehow, it stayed in the air. When the attack ended, the bomber limped westward, one engine coughing black smoke. Inside, the surviving crew worked like madmen, patching fuel lines with tape, tying control cables with their bare hands. The pilot could barely hold altitude. For hours, they flew across the empty sea, holding the aircraft together through sheer willpower. Every second was a prayer, every mile a miracle. At last, the airfield came into view. Espiritu Santo. The landing gear was destroyed. Hydraulics gone. They would have to crash land. The pilot, throttled back, lined up with the runway and whispered, "She's brought us this far. She'll bring us home." The bomber hit the coral runway in a shower of sparks. Metal screeched. Smoke poured from her belly. But when she stopped, she was still in one piece. Every man aboard was alive. When ground crews examined the aircraft, they couldn't believe what they saw. More than 600 bullet holes covered her body. The wings were shredded, control cables barely intact. One fuel tank had been hit 17 times and never exploded. Mechanics stood in silence, tracing their hands over the metal. It seemed impossible, but there she was, proof that faith, courage, and design could defy death itself. Across the ocean, Japanese intelligence studied the reports. Their pilots had fired thousands of rounds into these bombers and still failed to bring them down. One Japanese ace later said, "We saw their planes flying with wings full of holes, and still they came at us." To the Japanese, the B-17 became a symbol of defiance, an enemy that refused to die. By war's end, over 12,000 flying fortresses had taken to the skies. They flew through the flak over Europe, through storms in the Pacific, and through the pages of history. Their legend was not only about destruction, but about survival, about the belief that courage, craftsmanship, and brotherhood could make men unbreakable. The B-17 was more than an aircraft. It was a fortress of faith, a machine that turned ordinary men into heroes. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Chronicles Unfolded, where the forgotten moments of history come back to life.